Hello and welcome to the video. Today we are going to talk about moving to Canada using the express entry system. In these 10 minutes, we will cover what the entire journey from deciding that you actually want to come to Canada to actually getting your PR and being allowed to come to Canada as a permanent resident, what that process looks like, including the time and cost investment that you can expect. When I went through this process, I had to go through so many different sources to piece together the little information to actually understand what does this whole process look like. So the first step is actually to figure out, do you want Canada? Like, do you want to move here? Is this the right place for you? This step does not require any cost investments, obviously, but I think it's a very important step. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who actually come here and then Canada's not what they have expected. So I really recommend do your research. I can't tell you how long it'll take for you to figure out if this is the right place for you, but I can tell you how long it took for me. It took me 1 month. But my situation was different. I'm not going to go into that right now, but my situation was a little different. So maybe for you it'll be longer, and it should be longer because this might be one of the most important decisions you'll make in your life. So take your time, do your research. The one tip I can give you for your research is figure out two things. What motivates you to actually move here? And then what are your fears? What scares you for moving here? Based on those two categories, do the research to validate if your assumptions and your expectations are actually true. You might think, I want to move to Canada to earn money. Well, is it actually a good market to earn money? Or your fear might be, it's really cold and I'm not made for that. Well, people who've already moved here, are they actually having that bad of a time? Is the cold actually that bad, or is it just a hype that's been created? I will say, when you do your own personal research, take everything with a grain of salt, including what I'm saying here right now. You will hear completely opposite views on the same topic, and that's just dependent on whoever you're listening to, what their personal situation is, right? So behind what people say and what you hear, there's a why. Try to identify that and then try to figure out if that applies to your particular situation. All right, moving on to number 2. The first thing you did was figure out whether you want Canada or not. It's only fair to now figure out if Canada wants you or not. And this is something that is super important, especially for the particular process that we're talking about, which is express entry. And the federal skilled worker category, in fact, all of the express entry categories are known as economic class immigration. Canada prefers younger, well-educated, English or French-speaking people. That's just a fact, especially if you're looking at economic immigration categories. Why that is? Well, Canada's policies are super people friendly, right? So what that means is Canada supports all people from all economic walks of life by providing certain basic necessities such as healthcare and even education as completely free. Now, we all know there's no free lunch, so it's not really free. It runs on tax money. All Canada's trying to do is making sure that any immigrant who comes in is actually contributing to that tax pool, so contributing to the economy more than they are being a burden on it. So think about it. The younger you are, the longer you're going to be contributing to Canada's economy. You probably don't need healthcare that much. Don't take it as me saying, if you're a little bit older or if your IELTS is not the top bracket, that doesn't mean that you can't apply or come to Canada. Not at all. In fact, the first time I applied, I did not have enough points to qualify for express entry either. So I had to do some things, and it took me about a year to kind of get my profile better. And then I applied, and now I'm a permanent resident. All right, now moving on to the third step, which is make your express entry profile. Now this step, frankly, is super easy. I would say it takes about an hour to make your express entry profile, but you can't really fill that profile completely until you have two particular documents. The first one is IELTS and the second one is your education equivalence. IELTS, you probably know, is the English language exam. You could also take a French equivalent of that, but I'm going to assume that most of the people watching this are English speakers. So IELTS can take anywhere from 3 weeks to maybe 3 months, right? So it kind of depends on how prepared you are. Whenever you take the IELTS exam, it takes 2 weeks to get your results, right? So I would say minimum it'll take about 3 weeks. It might differ depending on the region you're in, but 300 Canadian dollars is the approximate cost. Now, education equivalence is something that Canada needs to assess that the education that you've done in your home country is equivalent to Canadian education. There are a few Canadian approved organizations that do education equivalence. The one that I used is called World Education Services, WES. It took me 2 months to get my certificate back, although they claim a month, but for me it was longer, so you should keep that in mind. So I would say 1 to 2 months. As for cost, it's about 220 Canadian dollars. Again, it could differ a little bit depending on where you are. For me, it was around $220. So once you have these 2 documents, you will head over to canada.ca and create your Express Entry profile. Now, since I'm trying to go over the whole process end to end, I don't want to spend too long going into specific profile creation here, but I will tell you that the process takes under an hour and costs $0. So if you are considering, get to this point, because then at least you have a chance, right, of getting picked in that system. It really does take under an hour, and if you don't believe me, I'm going to show that to you in an upcoming video. So if you want to get notified when that video is out, feel free to hit the bell button. And if you're liking this video so far, let me know by hitting the thumbs up. Once you're done with creating your Express Entry profile, the next step is to wait for your ITA. Now, ITA is invitation to apply. That is essentially Canada's way of confirming and saying, yes, we want you. Please come apply to Canada. You're welcome. The way that works is when your Express Entry profile is in the system, it will assign you something called a CRS score, comprehensive ranking score. This score is based on different aspects of your profile. If your CRS score is more than the CRS draw conducted by the Canadian government, then it's a positive. You will get your invitation to apply in that round. But if your CRS score is less than the cutoff that the Canadian government comes up with in that draw, then in that cycle, you are not going to get an invitation to apply, but your profile is still going to be active for a year. Canada has these draws every 2 weeks, so the wait should not be that long. So even if you don't get it this time around, it's all right. It might happen in the next couple of weeks or months. Time investment for this step can be as little as 2 days. So for example, if you apply today and the draw is scheduled to be tomorrow and your score is more than the cutoff, then by day after you will have an invitation to apply. So the minimum is 2 days and the maximum I would say is a year, because that is when your profile expires in the Express Entry system. If you do not get an invitation to apply in that year, that means that you'll have to create another profile, and it also means that maybe you should look at why that score is less and how you can improve it. Or if there's no way to improve it, then maybe there is another immigration program that you should consider. So think about that in case you're in that situation, but hopefully you're not. So let's move on to the next step, which is actually getting the invitation to apply. This is widely considered the first major milestone in your Canadian immigration journey. So if you get the invitation to apply, congratulations, it is a big deal. Feel happy and get ready to actually apply for your PR. Okay, so at this point, based on the information that you provided in your Express Entry profile, IRCC is going to update your PR application and ask you for a list of documents that pertain to your particular situation, you know, based on what countries you've lived in and so on. We're not going to go into too much detail of that process in this video because it is going to be a little bit lengthy. So I'll cover that in another one. What is important to note is that you have 2 months from you getting your ITA to actually submit your PR application fully, right? So you have to collect all your documents, pay the fee, and all of this needs to be done within 2 months from the day that you get your invitation to apply. In terms of cost, this is actually the first time that the Canadian government is asking you for any kind of fee, right? So up till this point, the only fee that you've paid has been maybe for your IELTS, for your education equivalents, but these are all third-party organizations. And if you do go through some kind of consultant, then maybe you pay fee to them. But until this point, you have not really paid the Canadian government anything directly. The fee is broken into two parts. There's processing fee of around $825, and there's the right of permanent residence fee, which is $500. So total, it comes to, what is that? $1325. I can do math. You should know that this $1325 is for one person, right? So if you're a couple, it's going to be double that. And if you have any kids, it's going to be $225 extra per child. Something you want to keep in mind is that the right of permanent residence fee, which is $500, you're free to pay that later as well. So you can pay that at the time that you receive your CoPR, which actually brings us to the next step. So after you have submitted your PR application, the following step is getting your CoPR, which is a confirmation of PR. This is the formal document that actually declares that you are now a permanent resident of Canada. Sorry, I got excited over there. But getting this has a waiting period involved, right? So how many times have you heard someone say, oh, I got my CoPR in 3 months or 3 weeks or 2 days? Like, who are these people and how are they getting it that fast? I have no idea. I personally got it in 9 months. I've seen people get it in as few as 3 months. So it kind of just depends, but know that the ball is now in their court. So you can't really hurry the process. But I would say after the 6-month average processing time that they claim has passed, you should go ahead and just reach out to them, because sometimes reaching out to them nudges them a little bit, and then someone actually looks at your profile and that can kind of get the ball rolling again. So what you actually get when you finally do get the CoPR, it's the official document saying that your PR has been now approved. Yep, pretty underwhelming given the hype. You can now come to Canada, right, as a Canadian PR. There's different ways for if you're already in Canada versus you're out of Canada. So if you're in Canada, you will likely just set up an appointment with one of the local visa offices. There will be a brief interview where they'll essentially just confirm the information that you've provided and make sure that you look like a normal person. It's also when they will take your information, such as address, so they can finally send you a PR card. Now, if you're out of Canada, you will have the same process, but at the port of entry. So you will need your CoPR letter, your travel visa, which they will provide you, and you will also need to have a valid passport. You will also need your proof of funds. So in 2020, given the situation that's been going on, the Canadian government is actually not doing in-person interviews. They did phone interviews for a while, but now they've actually transitioned to just a direct confirmation of permanent residency without this interview process requirement. And they do it over email. So that's how I got mine. But this process is primarily for inland applicants. If you're out of country, there will likely be another process because you have to go through that port. But most likely by the time you see this video and you're coming here, the process hopefully should have gone back to normal. That was the entire journey from when you decide to move to Canada to actually coming here as a permanent resident. I hope this was helpful. I will see you guys in the next one.